All right, we are live. Welcome. This is Orion Rising. I'm your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Share this out, share this out, share this out. All right, it's Friday night, the Law of One. It's also Good Friday. Welcome, Penny. Welcome, Rick. It's also Good Friday. So, those of you who are in any way Christian, I apologize for disrupting your Good Friday to talk about the Law of One. However, if you know me, Denise, welcome. You know that I teach non-denominational, even though I am a Christian minister, non-denominational spirituality. Okay, so share this out, share this out, share this out. I'm going to also share this. I was trying to do that in the middle of that song coming on, but I was having technical issues with, for whatever reason, trying to get this to share to a page. For some reason, it didn't want to do that. Right then, it was taking forever for me to do that, and I don't know why it was doing that, but it was. So that took me a few seconds longer than I wanted to. So now I'm sharing this out as well on my page. Oh, let me take down that banner so you guys can see my ugly mug here. Right, Friday night, the Law of One. I backed up a little bit because I guess I don't need my glasses on right this second. Right, except for when I'm trying to read you guys' comments. Let me put myself up in the full screen. You can see where I backed up to. I backed up because the next session is mostly Raw talk, or Dawn talking to Raw about Carla's energy and trying to convince Raw to terminate the session. The first half of it, it's like 10 minutes long, and 5 minutes of it is checking on Carla and saying we should end this session, and Raw saying Carla is the one who chose to give her energy to do this, and the energy is already allocated, so it would be a waste of energy if we didn't. And then they finally get into something. So I wasn't exactly sure 100% where we finished last time, but because of that and the fact that what they're talking about, which is going through the different levels, first dimension, second dimension, third, fourth, fifth, all the way to the sixth dimensional ascension, and food and sustenance and energy and what it is that it entails that you are learning about there. I wanted to make sure that we covered that a little bit more. And now my television is trying to turn down while I'm trying to turn it up for my mother. And that's annoying because it's now going down to 0. So I apologize because I have to go and fix this. So I'm going to start playing some Raw, and I'll come back because I need to have sound. And for some reason, the remote control is now having a technical difficulty. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and hop up and fix the sound on the television. And you guys can hear the question here.
43.12 questioner. Then, is there a time/space? Are there multiple incarnations in fourth density with time/space experiences between incarnations? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. 43.13 questioner. How long is a cycle of experience in fourth density in our years? Ra, the cycle of experience is approximately 30 million of your years if the entities are not capable of being harvested sooner.
See, so you guys should know that we already covered that, right? 30 million of our years for the cycle of existence over there in the fourth dimension alone, right? So now my mother's paying more attention to me than the television. So this is going to be one of those difficult days because eventually she's going to get up and come in here and want to sit down and stare at me. And then I'll have to be trying to get her up and herd her back there. And most of the time she's trying to go to sleep, but she's wide awake today and listening to me instead of the television. So I was trying to turn it up. Okay, so hopefully you guys can hear that okay. I'll turn that up a little bit if you need me to here because it is a little bit low, probably compared to my microphone. Okay, so literally, he just asked the question of how long does it take for people to be harvested in the fourth dimension? And by our perspective of time, I talked about that last time because we're moving faster than any other. The first and second and third dimension is moving closer to the speed of light than any other dimension in this multiverse illusion. So because of that, we're moving to stretch and have past, present, and future stretched into 3 separate entities or time periods for us to perceive. It literally we have to be moving, vibrating at a very fast rate of speed. The closer you get, if you know anything about physics, the closer you get to the speed of light, the more time stretches. So for us to have the illusion of past not being right now, present only being now, and future not being right now, our vibratory rate has to be very close to the speed of light. Okay, and that slows down time. Science is aware of that, on this planet. That's the only way that this entire scenario can work: first, second, and third dimension, and then it starts to condense. As you go into fourth, you start perceiving very readily everything is now. So when you get to the fifth and sixth, that's why they're always, if you deal with anyone from Deborah, welcome. Did I miss anybody? Cody, welcome. If you don't say anything in the chat, I just see numbers. I don't know who's here, but if you say something in one of the chats, I can, and it filters into here. And please share this out to wherever, your own page, or to maybe a group that you would like to have them listen to this. So for this to work and the perception of things, we have to be moving that fast. And then once you leave this place, everything starts happening instantaneously, past, present, and future. So let me get back on point what I was saying. So if you're a psychic in any way and you're constantly communicating with the other side, you'll hear them constantly saying, hurry up, because to them, everything is now. So it becomes, when they're trying to see what's going on down here, it becomes a little worrisome for them, because they don't understand the concept from where their perspective is of everything happening, not happening now. So they can see, and in their minds, they perceive something as very close to danger for you, or not being done fast enough, because for them, it's right now. And they're sitting there going, why are they not already doing this? Why are they not doing this? Because down here, we have a separation. So for them, instantaneously could be 100 years for us. And that would freak them out. So unless they're very awake, even in the fourth dimension, density, unless they're very awake there, their perception of time is askew from us. And for them, it's hard to calculate the distance of that time, because they're not experiencing it and they're not in it. Do you see? I didn't talk about this last time, and I wanted to make sure that I explained that. So you'll get from the other side, you'll constantly get, hurry up and do this, hurry up and do that. Because to them, it's scary. Why aren't they doing it already? You should already be doing this. I can't believe you're not already doing this. Especially for someone who's never experienced this, or has been away from the first, second, or third dimension long enough to have forgotten that now is now for them, and that means everything is happening instantaneously. So they start to lose their ability to comprehend what's going on down here, and that there is a separation of time, even though they're aware of it consciously. Well, there's a separation of time there. They still don't really fathom that to them it's just now, and they don't understand why you're wasting time doing things the way that we are, because they don't remember what it was like to be here and have that distance of manifestation being the way that it is. Cassie, welcome. So that's a perception thing. That's a lost in translation thing. Like we have problems with languages here. It's a perception differential that they have, everyone else has, outside of these and above all of these first, second, and third dimension. Okay. But from our perspective, everything that happens there almost instantaneously is 100 million years or a million years or a billion years from our perspective, because of how long it takes us to go through the now into now or now or now. So because of that, from our perspective, like Ra just said, how long is a cycle of life? For them, it's very short. But it is still long to them, because you have to realize that a nanosecond is a long time for them. An example of that, if you guys ever watch Star Trek, The Next Generation, there was that series when they were, I don't remember what season it was, third or fourth or something like that, and they were up against the Borg, and Data, who was a robot, or a sentient life form that was created instead of being a human, he's non-human, but they determined that he was actually self-aware. He had been on board the Borg ship trying to free Captain Jean-Luc Picard and their ship, and trying to save the Earth because the Borg went backwards in time to change things so that the human race wouldn't evolve the way that it did, so that they could take over the human race and Earth and integrate them into their society. And so they were trying to stop that, and the queen of the Borg was offering Data basically human existence by offering him. In fact, she made attached real skin to his body, and it had hair on it like you do on your arm. It was on his arm, and she literally just blew from her mouth onto the hair follicles. You don't realize it because you're used to it. That's a sensation. For Data, that sensation was brand new. He had never felt it before, so it was almost like a drug. And she had offered him to put him into a human body, his existence into a human body, mostly human Borg body, so that he would feel all of these things. Later on, he turns against her, so I'm giving you a spoiler, but he turns against her and he does not choose. And the captain, or someone, it was either Riker, the first officer, or Jean-Luc Picard, the captain, asked him about that choice, and he said, it took me exactly 0.012 nanoseconds to make that decision. And they were like, oh, well, that's a good thing. And he said, no, to put that in perspective, Captain, that 0.01 nanoseconds to an android is an eternity. Do you see? So that was a good example of the perception of time by an entity that works much faster in their minds thinking than we do, by 100-fold, 1,000-fold faster in thought process than we do, fast as a computer, because he has a computer positronic brain. So because of that, time, in our perspective of being a nanosecond, not even 2 nanoseconds, is like 100 years, 200 years to us before he made that decision. So that's a very, very long time. That's a really good example that you can actually watch in one of those episodes of that perspective, because he's moving even faster. So from our perspective, everything takes a long time. There was another episode in the old Star Trek where people had been sped up in their vibration, so they moved closer to the speed of light, and when they were on this planet, and nobody was able to perceive them, and all they would hear is a little buzzing, like a bee was flying by from their human perspective. And these entities were literally moving amongst the humans, and the humans were frozen because they were moving so slow compared to them, because they were moving even faster and closer to the speed of light than we humans are in a physical way, that when they walked into a room, everybody was just frozen. For the humans, that was less than a nanosecond. And they could walk through the room and do whatever they wanted and walk out. And then they would go back to the perspective of the humans, and they didn't notice anything. And they would go thinking that a bee just flew by them, and would look around wondering if there was a bee there. And then there was a way, because of some animal on the or something on the planet that would either bite them or they would touch it, and it would speed up them. So then the crew ended up being able to go there to that rate of speed, and then perceive them, and then have to battle of wits against them for the episode. And but again, that was another perspective of a race of beings that were moving closer to the speed of light than us. That was done by these people. Gene Roddenberry is a genius, and then his son doing the Next Generation was a genius in that most people never really actually got the reference of what was being shown to you, except there is a possibility that people move a lot faster than closer to the speed of light than we do in that perception. If you were a nerd who liked sci-fi, you got that, but you still didn't get the perspective of spirituality unless you were awake enough to perceive that. Okay, so so you have to realize that, and that's what they were talking about here, is that that number sounds insane, like 900 million years or 9 billion years to us for an evolutionary process. Long as we get out of here and it's even longer. No, it's from our perspective. Everything is perspective. Your perspective creates your reality. Your focus creates your reality. Okay, let's continue with Raw. Hopefully you guys can hear it. Nobody really told me whether you could hear it okay or not. So I'm assuming that you guys could hear Raw, and I'm going to go ahead and press play.
There is in this density a harvest which is completely the function of the readiness of the social memory complex. It is not structured as is your own, for it deals with a more transparent distortion of the one infinite creator. 43.14 Questioner. Then the big difference in Hive stability between third and fourth density is that at the end of the third density the individual is harvested as a function of individual violet ray, but in fourth density, is it the equivalent of violet ray then for the entire social memory complex that must be of a harvestable nature to go to fifth density? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct, although in fifth density entities may choose to learn as a social memory complex or as mind/body/spirit complexes and may graduate to sixth density under these conditions. For the wisdom density is an extremely free density, whereas the lessons of compassion leading to wisdom necessarily have to do with other selves. 43.15 Questioner. Then is sixth density harvest strictly of social memory complex because again we have compassion blended back using wisdom? Ra, I am Ra. This is quite correct. 43.16
Okay, it is, but he's not specifying, and maybe because of when it was 40 years ago. It's not completely 100% the graduation of the sixth density, not completely 100% based only on a complete social memory complex, because at that point you still have individuality, just like Raw does now. Raw mostly is communicating as a hive mind complex, but their individuality has not completely waned, so it's not completely gone. Their individuality is still there. However, they are mostly in a place of totality, of a hive mind complex totality, but not 100%. So I'm not. It might be that in 1982 or whenever this was, 81, 82, it might be that was one of those things they couldn't give that information yet, because the total hive mind complex of the human existence on this earth was not capable of understanding that particular portion. Be too confusing for them. That's got to be the only reason for that. That's, here we are 2024 instead of 1981. So there's a big difference in exponentially the ability for the human existence now to rationalize and compartmentalize this information on a higher spiritual plane level, individually and totally for the entire species.
Questioner. We know that the physical vehicle in fourth density that is used during space/time, I am assuming, is quite similar to the one that we now use in third density. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. The chemical elements used are not the same. However, the appearance is similar. 43.17 Questioner. Is it necessary to eat food in fourth density? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. 43.18 Questioner. The mechanism of, shall we say, social catalyst due to a necessity for feeding the body then is active in fourth density. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. The fourth density being desires to serve in the preparation of foodstuffs is extremely simple due to increased communion between entity and living foodstuff. Therefore, this is not a significant catalyst but rather a simple precondition of the space/time experience.
See, now we talked about that last time, so I don't want to spend too much time rehashing what we went through, but I want to give some clarification of some of the things that I didn't touch on last week that we're dealing with this. Like I said, once we end this session, The next session is nowhere on this topic at all. So I wanted to make sure that I really rang this out. We'll try to finish this session because I don't know how far we got. We were only on question like 13, 14, maybe 15 before we ended last week anyways. But I want to make sure that we get through it and specifically get pretty much done with it, because they may go back into it, but it won't be until halfway through the other one. So the other one's going to be quick. We'll be blowing through that mostly because there's not really much to talk about, although I will probably be talking about some of the energies and things like that. So it's going to be a completely different topic. It's going to be Carla and channeling mostly in the next session.
The catalyst involved is the necessity for the ingestion of foodstuffs. This is not considered to be of importance by fourth density entities in it, therefore, aids in the teach/learning of patience. 43.19 Questioner, could you expand a little bit on how that aids in the teach/learning of patience? Ra, I am Ra. To stop the functioning of service to others long enough to ingest foodstuffs is to invoke patience. 43.20 Questioner, I'm guessing that it is not necessary to ingest food in fifth density. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This is incorrect. However, the vehicle needs food which may be prepared by thought. 43.21 Questioner.
Right, this is where he starts talking about it being more like a nectar and a broth than solid food, like we're eating mostly the flesh of something, whether it's plant life or nuts and berries or an animal. Here, it becomes more of a broth, and it's created mentally out of the ether as you move up in density, so that it becomes more of a communal thing for people to gather, like we do now, where people sit down and eat together and talk. The same thing, but it's more of a spiritual thing happening there. It is already beginning here. That's why we call it ascension foods, when you have higher vibrational food, but people are just barely becoming aware of it in the third dimension. There's a lot of people who are, in fact, ascending through the third dimension. They realize the difference between a fast food restaurant with processed food, or processed food in a grocery store, and food that is organic or created by someone and cooked at home, or by someone who actually cares about what they're doing, where they put energy and love into the food itself, and they're proud of it, and it charges that energy in the food in a completely different way. We start to become aware of that here. When people start working out and exercising, they start craving other foods that are more energetic, that are more healthy than the other foods. They realize and start to see the benefits of eating better than they do before that, when they're not needing more energy. They realize, wow, if I eat just fruits and vegetables and good things, wholesome things that I fix for myself, I have so much more energy, and I can work out better, and I get more out of it. That becomes very apparent to people who start working out, and then they talk about it, and then drives other people crazy because they don't want to hear it from them, but they talk about it, and they're like, oh man, I used to hate vegetables. Now I crave them. I love them. So the foods that give you better energy, when you start taking care of yourself and taking care of your body, become very vital and essential to you. Same thing happens as you evolve. That is exactly what does happen. And though you go away from eating flesh things to feed a flesh body, because now you're starting to feed your spiritual body, you start using spiritual food. So you start to transition here into that higher plane of your upper three chakras and above. And when you go to the fourth and the fifth and the sixth, that becomes more and more prevalent as your physical body starts to fade away. And eventually there is none, and you become associated with your true self, which is all energy.
What type of food would this be? Ra, I am Ra. You would call this type of food nectar, or ambrosia, or a light broth of golden white hue. 43.22 Questioner, what is the purpose of ingesting food in fifth density? Ra, I am Ra. This is a somewhat central point. The purpose of space/time is the increase in catalytic action appropriate to the density. One of the preconditions for space/time existence is some form of body complex. Such a body complex must be fueled in some way. 43.23 Questioner, then, there is in third density the fueling of our bodily complex is not only simply fuels the complex but gives us opportunities to learn service. In fourth density it not only fuels the complex but gives us opportunities to learn patience. In fifth density it fuels the complex but does it teach? Ra, I am Ra. In fifth density it is comfort, for those of like mind gather together to share in this broth, thus becoming one in light and wisdom while joining hearts and hands in physical activity. Thus in this density it becomes a solace rather than a catalyst for learning.
See, so Christy, welcome. I haven't seen you for a minute here, right? Welcome. So, see, then it becomes more of a catalyst for learning. So instead of just being a social thing like we do now, where people sit around and talk while eating, we are already starting to do that. The social eating and the communal, where everybody gets together. And I'm not just saying we all eat off of each other's plate. When I say communal, I mean when everybody gets together and shares a meal, we share ideas and talk to one another as well. We communicate. So that creates this complex of either a family unit or a friends unit. Already we start that here. And then when you get into the fifth, it's more apparent and more towards the energetic, towards the spirit, towards the soul. And that is also starting the hive mind complex even further than the perception of it here. And this is what Ra is referring to there, right? All right, let's continue.
43.24 Questioner, I am simply trying to trace the, you might say, the evolution of this catalyst that then, as you say, changes in fifth density. I might as well complete this and ask if there is any ingestion of food in sixth density. Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. However, the nature of this food is that of light and is impossible to describe to you in any meaningful way as regards the thrust of your query.
Right, and I talked about that in some depth last week, that there is just really, really hard once you get to the higher densities even in this octave, which is 1 through, or 0 through 6 or through 7, just even into the 6th and trying to explain. It's bad enough trying to explain the 4th, and then it gets harder, even harder trying to explain the 5th, and even yet still completely harder. It's so alien. You have to realize now, think about that. We're in the 3rd dimension, 3rd density. So now we're talking about the 6th density, which is literally as far away from nothingness as we are here. Okay. So for your perspective, a gorilla is, what is that? Like 5% off of us. We are 5%, only 5% more advanced than a gorilla. Could you imagine trying to explain the concept of being self-aware and spirituality and all of what's going on currently, talking to a gorilla, which you would have to use sign language because they wouldn't be able to speak because they don't have the vocal cords or the actual wherewithal to be able to speak the way we do, because they don't have the larynx, they don't have any of this that stuff that we have. So it would have to be through. So you would be able to communicate with them, but it would be on a very simple level. You wouldn't be able to have super sophisticated spiritual conversations because they're completely unaware of that, unless the gorilla was in a stage of self-awareness that they basically were in their last lifetime as a gorilla, and then once they died, they would be moving into the human existence, and then they would be able to fathom some of what you were saying. That's only 5%. We're talking about double evolution now, 3 complete stages above us. So for a real perspective, that would be like going to a seahorse in the ocean and trying to explain to a seahorse in the ocean exactly what's going on as a 3rd dimensional being. There's no way to communicate what you're trying to say to that seahorse. That is very similar to trying to explain what goes on in the 6th density down here to the people here, even if I'm aware of it. Do you see? So that's why, as simple as Ra stated, yes, but it's a completely different ideology of energy, and I can't get into any details because there's just no way to describe it here. And he was very obvious about that. Let's continue.
43.25 Questioner, in 4th density on this planet after we're totally transitioned, and the harvest is complete. 4th density being...
Welcome, Kathy, by the way. Anybody who says hi, I see you there. If you don't say hi and you don't say anything, I just see numbers and I don't know who's here. So welcome. And if you guys have questions, please put them in the chat. I will pause to answer questions. I prefer question and answer. It doesn't always have to be only about what Ra's talking about. Okay, know that as well. If anybody who listens to me knows that I'm not just here only to interpret Ra. I can answer any of your questions about spirituality that you want to talk about. I can really probably try to answer any question about anything you want to talk about, but I'm trying to limit it to a spiritual way. Peter, welcome. Okay, let's continue.
Will be incarnate on the surface of this planet as we know it now, this particular surface. Is that correct? Ra, I am Ra. The probability/possibility vortices indicate this to be most likely. 43.26 Questioner. Then will there be at that time any fifth density and/or sixth density beings on the surface of the planet? Ra, I am Ra. Not for a fairly long measure of your time, as fourth density beings need to spend their learn/teaching space/time with their own densities entities. 43.27 Question.
See, so currently, and this is why I say this, and I've said this many times, but people don't really pay attention. Currently, this particular sphere, this planet that we call Terra, has first, second, third dimensional beings, fourth dimensional beings, no fifth or sixth or seventh, but it does currently have eighth dimensional beings. Okay, but that is on the next, that is the lowest run of the next octave. So the octave that is 0 through 7, we only have first, second, third, fourth. Okay, so fifth, sixth, and seventh may evolve here when the fourth dimensional beings that are here, if this planet evolves, but since it has to where there's already eight dimensional beings occupying this space, it's very likely that for fifth, sixth, and seventh may occur as the progression of time goes with the fourth. In their development, they may, instead of moving to another planet, it has already the capability, because of the eighth being here. That means that everything in between is possible from the highest level that is currently here, which is the fourth dimension, and the next octave. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to evolve that way. It depends on what this planet, what its evolution is supposed to support. We can't know that currently. I believe that it will, though. I don't know if it'll be sixth and seventh, but fifth, I believe more readily. I'm not sure beyond that. I could really probably try to look, but anything is, things are, the future is always uncertain. It's always emotion. So I would have to literally dislodge myself from here and go there and channel that information. And that takes a little bit more time to do that. But I think what I'm getting is that it is very likely that the fifth, the sixth, seventh will be here in this particular place before the planet, before the sun expands. But by that time, it won't matter. Even if the sun expands and destroys the planet in the third dimension, this Sol, the what you know as the sun, even if that occurs to destroy the first, the second, and the third, we're already not really supposed to be here anyways. Okay, the third dimensional life forms that are currently on this planet, the evolution of that was already supposed to have changed us into the fourth. So it was supposed to be first, second, and fourth. Third was already supposed to be gone, but it's not. And we're holding it here by being here because the people got stuck and they're still stuck here. Okay. So everything can change. Everything's fluid. Everything is created by the individuals in the logos. That is their current illusion, their current form of reality. Let's continue.
Then basically what you are saying is that at that point the teachings of fifth or sixth density beings would not be too well understood by the fourth density, new fourth density. Ra, I am Ra. Do you wish to query us upon this point? 43.28 Questioner. I guess I didn't state that correctly. Is it true that the fourth density, new fourth density beings then need to evolve in their thinking to reach a point where fifth density lessons would be of value? Ra, I am Ra. We grasp the thrust of your query. Although it is true that as fourth density beings progress they have more and more need for other density teachings, it is also true that just as we speak to you due to the calling, so the information called is always available. It is simply that fifth density beings will not live upon the surface of the planetary sphere until the planet reaches fifth density vibratory level.
See, so literally, currently, this is why I said if I look far enough out there, I can see that it is a possibility. But currently, this planet has not evolved to sustain fifth dimensional life forms. Do you see? And Ra is explaining that. And that was 40 years ago when Ra said it. Ra is explaining that right there. So then the probability of a fifth dimensional civilization was not as probable as now. We're 40 years in our perspective of time, in our evolution, past that. That's a lot when you go to the fourth. However, it's still currently not. But it is a probability that could happen, a possibility. But the possibility probability will be determined by the fourth dimensional beings. And once we move as mass minds, the majority of people that were capable or will be capable once we get everybody unstuck and past that point, there will be a mass exodus of people that will start as they die. So the population of the earth is going to change. But when it does do that, it's not going to be like, God shows up in a bus and it's the rapture and there's going to be all these left behind that are going to still remember that all of a sudden a billion, or more, if you go by the Christian standard, there, that if you've been baptized and, 2.7 billion humans have been baptized as Christians alone, because they claim that without the baptism, you don't get to go. But every religion says the same thing, that if you're not us, you don't get to go. According to the Hebrews, they're the only ones who get to go, right? You have to be a Jew. You have to be Jewish in blood and religion, or you don't get to go to heaven. Then the Christians say you got to have water chucked on your face, and I have to say some shit in Latin that you don't even understand even now when I say it. I remember when I was at a church, and I actually said that, and then I remember doing it a couple of years ago online, and I said, "In nomine Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancti," and everyone looked at me like I was speaking Latin, which I was, but no one understood that. So far removed from most English-speaking people and even Christians, because it's rare to find a mass done in Latin anymore. They do it more in Spanish than they do in Latin anymore. And that one's similar, but not quite in Latin, because Latin is based on, or Spanish is based on Latin. So the words are very similar. So they can understand it a little bit more. But then I had to say it in English. And then people looked at me like, how dare you talk like that? And I'm like, you guys realize I'm a minister, right? So I could be doing this in a church. I have the license. Have the license and the ID. I could go and apply for a job and be at a church, and I could do a mass. And then I could do a mass in Latin if I wanted to. Right? So why would that be strange to you? It was strange to them because they had no idea what I was saying. And then some who, because they're indoctrinated by all the Christian religions, the fact that sounded very Catholic was offensive to them, because they're indoctrinated by the war machine that is the divisiveness of only our religion is the best one and the right one. All other religions are fake and they're not real. And that's what they teach you in all religions currently. And they have for a very long time, ever since the Anunnaki. I use finger quotes because that word doesn't exist in the way that you think. It doesn't mean an alien race that came down from the heavens. And it doesn't mean what Zechariah Sitchin said in 1948, that the god Anu came to Earth. Doesn't mean either one of those. Look up the actual scholars who actually have translated the language and have read because they actually do. There's not just one scroll. Everyone thinks that the scroll that talks about Marduk and Tiamat is the only scroll of that language. That's completely false. That's one scroll. There are entire dictionaries and history books of the Mesopotamian people that have been found that are currently on the planet. But everyone goes, oh, it's just that Dead Sea Scroll, and that's the only one. Not true at all. So there's scholars who have actually translated the entire language, and the word Anunnaki doesn't exist that way at all. It's Anunnaki, 2 words, not Anu, Ki. Because that's all that Zechariah Sitchin translated. Anu, the god Anu, Ki comes. Or what's that word Na that's in between those 2 words? He didn't translate that. And then Giorgio Tsoukalos in 2012 said, those from the heavens came. So now it's an entire species. And so now it's evolved 10 years later, 12 years later, into them adding it to the pantheon, and it found a space on the Mesopotamian scroll and said that there's the whole entire species that's called the Anunnaki. And then they have people calling Marduk Anunnaki. And so now they're trying to say that Marduk was in fact an Anunnaki. Marduk was supposedly a god, but not Anu. And Anu is not part of their god pantheon at all. That comes from the Akkadians. So if you're ignorant and you don't know that stuff, you just believe what you're being told by people who are not theologians, who haven't done the research, who are pushing a narrative to get paid. That's what Zachariah Sitchin was doing. That's what Giorgio Tsoukalos has done, because they get paid. He drove the entire narrative of the ancient aliens idea to keep getting paid by that translation of those from the heavens came. That means aliens came down to Earth, and therefore his theory was right. And then they were able to. History Channel kept them in business, still do. They just regurgitate. Nothing new has been taught in Ancient Aliens since 2012, when they started the entire thing. They had all the interviews they just chopped up, and every season they just pick a topic and then show what all those people talked about on that topic. They're still showing brand new episodes of guys that I personally know who said, I filmed that in 2010. I filmed that in 2012. And their new season, 2024, playing stuff that they filmed 10 years ago, 12 years ago, because they're just regurgitating the same thing. There's nothing new that comes out of Ancient Aliens. And if you think I'm throwing rocks at that, I created Ancient Aliens Worldwide, the group that has more than 300,000 members currently, and I still own it. And I created that back in 2012. So it's not like I'm coming from a place of, I don't want you guys to think that there's aliens or that there's gods who came here or people who came here in the past, because all that's true. Let's continue.
43.29 Questioner. I was wondering, then, if the mechanism of teach/learning was the same, relatively, then in fourth density. From what you say, it seems that it is necessary for first the call to exist for the teach/learning of fifth density to be given to fourth, just as a call must exist here before fourth density lessons are given to third. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. This query is misguided, for experience in fourth density is emphatically not the same as third density experience. However, it is correct that the same mechanism of calling predisposes the information received in a way consonant with free will. You may ask one more full question at this working. 43.30 Questioner. You stated that the key to strengthening the will is concentration. Can you tell me the relative importance of the following aids to concentration? I have listed silence, temperature control, comfort of body, screening as a Faraday cage would screen electromagnetic radiation, visible light screening, and a constant smell such as the use of incense for strengthening your concentration in meditation. In other words, an isolation type of situation. You mentioned that this was one of the functions of the pyramid. Ra, I am Ra. The analogies of body complex to mind and spirit complex activities have been discussed previously. You may consider all of these aforementioned aids as those helpful to the stimulation of that which in actuality aids concentration, that being the will of the entity. This free will may be focused at any object or goal. 43.31 Questioner. I was really trying to get at whether it would be of great importance to construct a better place for our meditations. We have distractions here of the types which I mentioned, and I know that it is our total free will as to whether we construct this or not, but I was just trying to get at the principles. For instance, the Faraday cage would be quite a big construction, and I was wondering if it would be of any real value? Ra, I am Ra. Without infringing upon free will, we feel it possible to state that the Faraday cage and the isolation tank are gadgets. The surrounding of self in a sylvan atmosphere, apart from distractions, in a place of working used for no other purpose, in which you and your associates agree to lay aside all goals but that of the meditative seeking of the infinite creator is, shall we say, not gadgetry but the making use of the creation of the Father in second density love, and in the love and support of other selves. Are there any brief queries before this working is at an end?
Right. So Faraday cage protects you from electricity here in the physical, your physical body. It doesn't protect you against spirituality. Okay. And spiritual beings or beingness doesn't. And then, of course, the tank does the same thing. It's an isolation tank. So it isolates you from all of your spirit or your physical perceptions and feelings to allow you to then meditate better for people who cannot separate themselves or need more or less stimulus to themselves. And that's the only reason why people need to do that. Okay. So if you're meditating and you learn to meditate and you're capable of doing that and you quiet your mind, you can do that instantly, and you don't need to be in a Faraday cage. You don't need to be, unless there's like you're working with electricity and magnetism, and you could do damage to the vibrational pattern of your human body. That's different. But you don't need to have those. So those people that do that, say with a tank, and then they get in that, those people are specifically wanting to dampen all feelings. So they get in there and they're floating. They can't feel anything in their body, and they're of course it's blacked out. They don't hear anything. So those people have a hard time trying to do that in their regular life anyways. They can't ignore what's going on, and they probably have a hard time quieting their own mind. So by doing that, that forces them to have to do inner work. Some people need those tools. It's just like a religion and going to an Orthodox church. I've said this many times. When I was going to the Catholic Church, my priest, who in fact baptized me back in 2002, Father Neil, he literally, I said this, we were there in the church and we were given a tour of the church, showing people the Beatitudes and the church and why it was set up the way it was. And people were saying, that Father, I'm so glad that you're here to do what you're doing. And he said, I'm only here because you need me to. Some people need another human being to be here. When you go in to give confession, you need a human to sit next to you, a priest to sit next to you and tell you and give you absolution, tell you what you should already know. If you are forgiven by your Creator, if you are true to yourself, if you're true to the Creator and you really are repenting and you really are sorry for what you're doing, you're immediately forgiven for your sins. If you're doing it just because you want to be forgiven, so you hit a reset button so you can go back out and do other things, then the Creator knows that, and you're not going to be forgiven. Some people don't believe they can be forgiven on their own, so they need a priest to tell them that they're forgiven. And they were like, this concept to most of the people standing in front of us was an insane concept that he just said, that I'm only here because you need me. He was awake enough to be able to say that. I'm only doing this because you guys need a human to tell you it's okay, to deliver the message to you, because you don't feel that you can receive the message any other way. Some people need that structure and need a priest and need a religion. That's why I say it's not wrong if it fits for you. Okay, their curriculum is never really going to teach you ascension en masse. They don't. You go look at their curriculum. Their curriculum is all about physical relationships with other people. It's not anything spiritual really at all, other than follow Jesus and keep coming back here and be ready, because Jesus is coming in a bus to come get a bunch of us. And so you have to be ready, because otherwise you guys are going to get left behind. That's what they teach. That's what they teach in most religions, and specifically the Western Judeo-Christian religions all over the place. I have the curriculum sitting on my desk. I don't think it's out here. No, it's not. I don't have the Bible out here. I have it sitting on my desk that has all the curriculums in there. I am a minister. I have that Bible. And it has the curriculum, what to teach at what month, depending on the year. And it's a cycle. So you just got to figure out where you are in the cycle, whether it's an odd or even number of a year. This is 2024, right? So 2024, I believe in September, you'll start hearing about relationships. October, you'll hear about personal relationships. So you'll be man and woman relationships, husband-wife relationships, and the like, as you start going into the holidays on 2024, right? So because it's an even number. I know that, right? You don't know that because you're not aware of it unless you pay attention to write it down every year and look back. And then if you go to the same church long enough and they stay on that same curriculum, whether it's a 2-year cycle, a 3-year cycle, or a 5-year cycle, you'll see that it repeats, and that every month is the same every 2 years or 3 years or 5 years. So September on even months or even years, if it's a 2-year, will be the exact same topic 2 years later. But most people don't catch that because it's 2 years down the road. So you don't remember that the priest talked about that 2 years ago, specifically on the same week in the same month. And then they have different things that they read to you anyways. So if they read you the first section of, because we're going into April. So April, because it's spring, and we have literally Easter is Sunday. So literally right now, everything is about springtime, Easter renewal. Okay. So it'll continue in April. The stories from the Bible that they'll read to you will be different this year than they will next year, because even that is broke down to where it might be the same subject, Easter, but you're going to hear different stories from the Bible about Easter in different places, as well as the whole story of Jesus and his death and resurrection. But you'll hear other things that they say, oh, no, Ecclesiastes, blah, 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 blah. Those things are set up so that next year, if you were writing it all down, you realize there's something different. It's the same message. They're just allegories. That's all they are. They're just another version of the same story from a different place in the Bible. They do that all the time. That's how the Bible works. They can say things from 10 different places in the Bible that give you the same knowledge, because that's the way the Bible is set up. And so most of the stories there are redundant, and they're telling you the same thing. Everything actually is cyclical in nature. That's just like everything that I say. If you go back and listen enough, you start going, he repeats himself. Yeah, I do. I talk in allegories. I talk in parables. So sometimes I give all 7 that I can come up with. Sometimes I don't. Do you see? That's the way Jesus spoke, parables. So if you go and listen to the Sermon on the Mount, the whole entire Sermon on the Mount is one category. And it's told 7 different ways, 7 different stories talking about his disciples and using what's going on with them specifically for them to get, and not saying their names to the crowd. 7 different ways, because people learn 7 different ways. So people sit there and he talked about this, and then he talked about that, and he talked about this. Most people didn't realize that all of those stories had the same exact moral. 90%, 99% at the time, and 90% now when people read the Sermon on the Mount have no idea that every story he's telling you in there is the exact same moral story, just totally different way. All Bibles are structured that way. All of nature is structured that way. All of the information that you get, all of everything that goes on is, that's why when people say it's the Matrix and they start seeing ones and zeros and ones, it's a spiral. That's why you have that spiral all over the place throughout time, in cave walls and everything, because the cyclical nature of that Fibonacci sequence that is a spiral is the nature of the universe, and it spirals 3, 6, and 9. It's always outward, 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 inward, 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 and looping back outward, outward, inward, inward, going to 0 and all, 0 and 9, to the 0 point and everything, the God particle, the Higgs boson, and in and out, in and out, in and out. That's just what it does. That's how it works. So every level that you go, first dimension, second dimension, third dimension, you're going to spiral outward and inward at the exact same time until you graduate all the levels in between, until you go to the 4th, and then it starts over again, but it's now a sphere. There's a triple toroidal field of the 4th dimension, just like the 3rd dimension is, the 1st, the 2nd. They're all the same. But they're different levels because the focus is on different things. One is survival, one is nutrients, and then you start moving into learning, wisdom, spirituality. This is the place of the general education, like you get from grades 1 through 12. And then when you go to college, you have the same thing starting over, but at a higher level. That's why our school system is set up the exact way it is, because that's natural, the way we learn as individuals, as our souls. So we're literally creating in the physical that which is the universe, as below, so above, as within, so without. So we literally created our educational system because that is the way we learn, and that's the way the universe is set up for us to learn. So therefore, we're driven to create that exact same scenario in the physical plane of our existence. So grade 1 through 12 is the same. And then when you go to college, even if it's a 4-year college, now you're focusing more on individual things that are not the general education. That's exactly what happens in the 3rd dimension, is you were learning all these general educational things. And then when you move into the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, you're focusing on one particular narrative and learning all that there is to do about that, which you already learned a little bit about and the concept of down here. Okay, let's continue.
43.32 Questioner. I'd only ask if there is anything we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or to improve the contact. Ra, I am Ra. All is well. I leave you in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in the power and the peace of the one infinite creator. Adonai.
Right, now I'm starting to read what you guys said there. Right, so I don't know if you're talking about me, but no, I actually speak in a way on purpose. So the tone of my voice and the things that I say, if I'm talking to you individually, I do that even more. So if you're anxious, I'm going to be calming. If you're, I'm very hypnotic. I actually was part of a study where people were learning that when we talked about that, about changing your voice in a certain way. That's why you should watch Dune, because in the movie Dune, or read the books by Frank Herbert, there was an entire religion that was based on what they called the weirding way, which was language and voice, but they were using it for their advantage to control people purely. But Paul Atreides used that for more than just that. And then he found, because the Fremen on Arrakis, otherwise known as Dune, they were also using their voice for weapons. And he finds out that his name that he goes by, or that he becomes as the prophet, is literally an attacking force. So when people say his name, it does damage to other people. And so they had these devices that had a microphone right here. Only in the movies they show it as one microphone right here, but it was two that sit here on the throat that pick up the sounds, and so they could go and that would make a sound that would vibrate through that and go into the handheld device and turn into a weapon to do different things. They described that in the book and in the movie. So there were two instances of utilizing it to control other humans or to do damage. And he started realizing that through all of that, he could use that in different ways as well, beyond that wasn't for profit or for damage or for control. And that's another example of that. And we're aware of that. People are aware of that. There was a study, there was a video that I didn't put out, but I shared a few months back, 6 months ago, I think it was, where they were talking about people doing that guttural, I forgot what they call it, fry sound in their voice and singing, and how that's developed by the humans in the last generation, literally in the last 25 years, 30 years. And that, people are like, oh, the government did it on purpose. Weird that the government would do that and just allow everyone to have it that was born at a certain time, and that they're utilizing that. And the government's not utilizing that to, like the weirding way from Dune, which you would think they would be doing to do the Jedi mind trick on people, but you don't see any examples of that, except for there's these people who claim that's what's happening, but yet there is none of that. Oh no, because it's happening to you, you're not aware of it, so they're doing it and you just don't know it. That's just not true, because some of us would be there's going to be a certain percent that is going to be completely immune to the effects of that, and so those people would be blowing the whistle by now. Even if they were deleted, they would have it out there and they'd be talking about it, you would hear about it, and there'd be theories, right? So that's just paranoia, and everybody's afraid, and it's because it is an evolution of the vocal cords and that sound, and the powers that should not be do not want you to know about it, because it is a precursor to that kind of stuff that they can't control. That's the truth of it. Okay, so we're aware of that, and I'm aware of that. I speak in a certain way on purpose, with a cadence on purpose, when I speed up and slow down my cadence, and the way I say words in this language on purpose, because it has an effect on you guys. I'm aware of that. There are people out here that are aware of that, and that we're not doing it against your will to do something to do harm to you. Okay. Some people try to do that with their voices on television, who are in fact in service to self, but that only lasts so long, because people innately have the ability to perceive that, and they start at first because they want to believe the person is saying the truth. They'll listen and follow that person and go, yeah, no, I believe them. They talk. That's why people who are really good orators, Barack Obama, is aware that he can utilize his voice. Look what Adolf Hitler did. He could utilize his voice in a way to persuade the masses, and those people become someone who does that. Barack Obama is not doing it because he's a holy man and he is trying to help the human race evolve. He's doing it to enrich himself and the people of his religion, which is politics. Okay, that's why he does it. So don't be fooled by that. But people in politics are that way. So those who are really good speakers utilize that ability that they have for their own benefit. I could probably do the same thing and make a lot of money by doing that. But that's not what I'm about. I'm not about riches and fame and fortune. I wouldn't mind having some money and being able to not worry about where I'm going to live or whether I'm going to have food or a roof over my head, just like everybody else. But I'm not going around and getting paid, $500,000 an hour like Barack Obama to speak, right? Or more. Someplace he gets $5 million for an hour to talk. And what is it that they're talking about? Well, it doesn't matter because he has that ability. I remember when I heard him speak for the very first time, when he was a senator, I was like, my brother said, have you heard this guy called Barack Obama? He's going to be running for president. And I said, no, I haven't. He says, you should hear him speak. And my brother and I are very scientific minded. In fact, he's going to college right now as he's working still in his life. He's going to college to become a minister. He's going to theological college currently. So literally, I turned on and found Barack Obama that was on the news, and I started listening to him speak. And I called my brother and said, that's going to be the next president of the United States. He goes, I know, right? He's a great orator. I said, man, he's got everybody bamboozled. He's a great orator. Bill Clinton is another one. Great orator. Even though Ronald Reagan was, when he spoke, people listened. So I'm looking at both sides of the aisle here. George Bush Sr. Jr. was not a great orator. He was like Biden, where he would stumble and bumble his words and say things backwards or wrong. So people made fun of him, just like they did Joe Biden his entire career. Now he's doing it more because he's not just, he's getting old and he's starting to dement. So he's having a little bit more difficult time, but he's always been that way. He's never been a great orator. When he's on, he's on. Same thing with George W. Bush. When he was on, he was on. But then, like that time when he tried to say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. And that didn't come out. And he was like, well, you can't fool me, and he looked stupid and everyone laughed at him. So he would stumble. Guys who don't stumble and they can say that. Barack Obama's cadence is beautiful when he gets going. And he motivates people. And he's utilized that his entire career. Shot him forward. I don't know if he went to school for it. I never looked into it. But he went from being a senator for a very short time, year or two, to the presidency because of his ability to do what he does with his voice. Not a joke. Okay. I'm aware of that. I do the same thing. And those people that I work with, I make them aware of it so it's not like I'm trying to trick you guys into not realizing and I'm trying to hypnotize you. And then somewhere in the middle of the conversation, all of a sudden I go, send me money, send me green, heaven you will meet. Make your contribution and you'll get a better seat, because I don't do that, right? However, I do on purpose tend to use a cadence when I'm speaking, depending on the vibration of who I'm focusing on, lower vibration, mid-range, higher vibration. I change my cadence on purpose and the speed in which I speak on purpose to vibrate at the set levels to reach people, whether you're aware of it or not. Okay. I do that. But the message that I'm getting across to you is spirituality and ascension, not greed and power and control. All right, let's continue.
March 24th, 1981. 43.0 Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. Before we communicate, may we request the adjustment, without the touching of this instrument's physical body complex, of the item which presses upon the instrument's head. This is causing some interference with our contact.
Well, what happens there, Rick is talking about Dr. Joe, and I believe he is talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza. What happens, Rick, is that he makes you comfortable. Same thing happens to people who come and sit with me for any length of time. The energy of wherever the space is that I am in, I control that energy and I keep out the bombardment of the negativity from everything in this matrix. So everyone says you have a sleep spell on your house because when you come into my presence, all of that bombardment is not happening to you. Subconsciously, you're aware of it. Consciously, you're not aware that that's what's happening. You just feel comfortable. And then when I speak and I'm also realizing, say, that you came in and you were stressed, unless I'm stressed about something, I'm also calming. And what happens is that's why, like, if you read a book, you get tired because you become comfortable. It's like a blanket. So when you're listening to someone like the doctor, as you guys are talking about, Dr. Joe, his voice and his energy is putting you into a comfort zone. And so you end up falling asleep. It's not that he puts you to sleep because he's boring. He puts you to sleep because he's actually pulling all of the negativity away from you and allowing your entire beingness to relax. That makes you comfortable. And then you start falling asleep. People come to my house, they do the same thing if they're here for any length of time, an hour, and everybody is falling asleep unless you're used to being in that environment. Okay. Some people quicker than that, but no one lasts an hour and they're like, oh man, I got to go. I'm falling asleep. I can't believe I'm falling asleep. Man. And I just smile and I'll tell them why, but most people go, yeah, all right, whatever. But either way, I got to go because, man, I'm falling asleep sitting here. And that happens to everyone who, wherever it is that I'm holed up, and people like me. So it's not just me. I'm not trying to say that I have an ability or a power that no one else has. Anyone who's aware of their environment and they realize what's going on and that you're bombarded by negativity and anxiety and fear from the television, from the internet, from people out in the world, and everybody's just freaking out about everything. When you get into an environment where all of that energy is no longer bombarding you, you relax. People who can't go to sleep because they can't turn off their mind have their ego constantly talking to them, freaking them out, and they can't sleep, so they get insomnia. Those people need to learn to quiet that. Now, I am not the thinking mind, and that needs to stop. Literally, someone that I used to work for, their son, who started working with me on in construction in the summertime when he was not in school, I found out that he had schizophrenia. He saw this imaginary little boy, and there was another, I think it was a little girl as well, and they were constantly bothering him and yelling and screaming and running around, and no one else saw him. So he knew that it was a psychosis, and it made it even worse. And he found that the only way he could quiet that was to watch horror films. And I said, that's because it's a distraction to you and that voice in your head by the violence. And so you're able to relax. So you could meditate and do the same thing. And he was like, "What? I don't understand. I don't know how to do that." I taught him how to meditate and taught him to quiet his mind and meditate, and told him it takes practice. It's not going to happen instantaneously, but if you do it enough and you learn, you'll be able to quiet your own mind and take control of that. As he developed, it didn't take very long, a month or two, that boy disappeared. So did the little girl. The voices stopped in his head. He no longer had to watch horror movies, and he would just meditate constantly. So every day, every night, during the day when he was on a break, he'd meditate for a few seconds or a minute or a few minutes instead of napping. And then he would do the same thing at night, and he learned to meditate. And as long as he kept that up, that psychosis went away without medication, without doctors saying he was crazy and trying to give him medication. He was able to control that. I taught him that. It's not something that I had that was mine. It was just meditation. He had just never thought about meditation, and I introduced it to him and then told him what it could do for him. He believed it, looked into it, learned how to do it, controlled his ego, and it went away. He was able to move outside of the reach of the ego whenever he wanted to. I don't know if he's still doing it. That was 10 years ago, 12 or more years ago. It was probably, last time I talked to him was like 2012, and we're in 2024. So 10, 12 years ago. So I don't know if he's still doing it or not. Okay. All of this has to do with your focus. The same thing with cadence. Words mean things. Why do you think they call it spelling? Okay. Why do you think they call it spelling when you're writing words? Because you're casting a spell. You're saying things in a specific way that create a specific resonance, even in your brain when you read the words, in a specific order that have energy, because words count. Words have energy. So what you say and what you put into what you say, the energy you put into words that you're using can either hurt people or help people, depending on your perspective and your motivation, whether you're trying to be good or evil, in service to self or in service to others. Those of us who are aware of that learn that in the way that we speak, because we have an intention that we're trying to get across to you. And we only have this language or any language to describe to a certain group of people, depending on what country they live in and what language they speak. So the parameters of that language, and I'm using English, specifically American English, which drives the Irish and English crazy, right? And it doesn't matter what language, like Rick, who understands Australian English, because that's where he's living, right? And whoever else here that might be from there. Anyone else that's in the United States, you're used to this, but even you have a different accent depending on where you are and what state that you're in, but you understand what I'm saying and understand it because we have a common English language. So I utilize the peaks and valleys in the vibrational pattern. Many people who speak either on podcasts or in person, most of those people who are good at it are doing that. Most people are unaware that we're doing it to you. So it's just like anything else. When you have a knowledge, people have to choose whether to use it for their advantage because they're self-serving, or use it for your advantage because we're in service to others. So that's what's happening in that. And so if you listen to somebody and you get tired, either they're boring and they're going, nah, 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 talking very, monotone. That'll drive anybody to sleep because there is no energy there that captivates you. They talk like this and they're up on stage. And this next photo comes from Egypt. And this is when I was there in 1852. That's going to put everybody to sleep in the crowd because it's boring. So everyone's going to go, oh, geez, fall asleep. So unless that's what Dr. Joe does to you, which I doubt, the other effect is he's comforting you with his voice and the words that he's saying. And so you're listening and you become comfortable. It's like a blanket, and then you get comfortable and you want to fall asleep. So you would have to decide which is which is happening. Okay, let's continue.
43.1 Questioner, is that the pillow or something else? Do you speak of the pillow under the neck? Ra, I am Ra.
But that's just like with me. I talk. My brother even said, like, you average like 3 hours on a Friday? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, what could you possibly be talking about? I said to him, I say the same thing when I started reading the 6 books that are the Law of One. What could they possibly talk about for 106 sessions? And literally, I just went, wow. So there's a cyclical nature. And I told him, you're going to find yourself doing the same thing, Jay. When you start talking in front of people or to people and you start using parables, you're going to realize that to do, say, 4, 5, 6, 7 parables, depending on how long that parable is, that could take you a few hours to get your point across to 7 different ways of learning. He was like, yeah, I see that. And I'm like, so the truth is I can stay on one subject. And some people are going to be like, boring. He's saying the same thing over and over. Those are higher vibrational people who are aware and perceiving that I'm speaking about the same thing over and over. Most people are not. But then you have people that are very short attention span that I don't hit on a subject in a way that they understand until, because I can't guarantee that you're going to understand all of them or any more than one. So if I'm doing that, it may be until the end before it comes to you. You may not stay long enough to hear it because you're like, oh, boring. I have no idea what he's talking about. He's just going on and on, blah, 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 blah. He's just rambling. And you may jettison, or it might hit you first. And then you would, after you heard it, I got it. And then you're waiting. Okay, I don't understand what he's saying. He's rambling now. And then you may leave again. But if I don't do that, I'm leaving people out who will never get to hear it. It's just when I do my reels, if it's more than one image, that's why. If it's only one image and I leave it up long enough for you to read it, and I try to read as slow as I can to go, okay, 4th grade reading comprehension, which most people are 6th to 7th anyways. And so I try to leave something on the screen long enough so that people don't have to go, what was that? I didn't get to finish it. Most people try to speed read through something anyways, and they still don't get it. I'll put up multiple images, but I don't always do that. The last few that I put up were one image because I wanted that message to get across. But sometimes I'll do that, and it'll be like almost a full minute, 45-second long reel, or short, depending on the platform you're on. And most people will catch the first thing and gone, because they're used to going swipe, 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 because that's what they're programmed to do in most of those reels. So I try to hit as many people as I can with the first message, and then I give bonus messages for those people who have slowed themselves down enough to go, I want to wait until the end to find out what else is here. Even if it's just one image, they'll wait until the end. You'd be surprised how few people watch something all the way through. That's why most of the people that are out there don't do anything more than 30 seconds to a minute. All sound bites now are between 5 and 25 seconds long. Commercials on television, which used to be 30 seconds in length, are now 5 to 15 seconds in length. Because so many people, because of social media, have such a short attention span, because social media is designed for them to slow down their attention span or speed up their attention span to lessen it, that they don't stay long enough to see these messages. But there is a growing population of people who still do. Those people should be rewarded for that by getting a message that everyone else does not get. I'm aware of it, and so are other people. Some people try to trick you. I don't do this. And they say, wait till the end, because they get more money when they have an average viewership of longer. So they want you to stay until the end. Most of those, when you click on them on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or any Snapchat or any of those, because they're all the same video just posted on several platforms, most of those that say on there, either in words, wait until the end, or someone says, wait till the end, most of them are useless and nothing fucking happens at the end. That bothers me, but see, that's a clickbait for that kind of thing, where you wait to see what's going to happen at the end and then nothing happens. And I know if you've ever done it, that drives you crazy, because you're like, I just sit here and watch this for 30 seconds and nothing happened. That's annoying, right? And that they do that on purpose, because they want to get you to go all the way to the end because they get paid more. So those people who say that up front, wait until the end, because this is, you need. But some people are honest. Like I saw Aaron Fowler, who has his YouTube channel and things, where he actually said, he tells you, please watch us to the end, because it's important. We get more viewership and we get more clicks and we get paid more if you watch it to the end. He's honest and telling you, please watch it all the way through, because that helps us to bring you more content. He's not just telling you that and lying to you and having nothing happen at the end. He's being honest and telling you, please watch this all the way through, because that will help us to be able to give you more content. You guys aren't aware of that. 99% of the population are not aware that the more that they're pushing you and driving you to try and keep the viewers watching to the very end, however that you can. The more you do that, the more it is beneficial monetarily and otherwise by these algorithms on these platforms. You're not aware of that because you're just a person that is sitting there flipping, right? So honestly, unless you're a person who posts things, and then you become aware of it because it's in the how do I, when you go, well, how do I get better viewership? How do I monetize my stuff? When you read those tutorials, they tell you, this is what we require to get you paid. You need to have longer viewership and more sustainable, not just likes and clicks, not just the amount of people following you and the amount of people clicking on your stuff, not just views and followers, but length. Okay. So some people are doing it for their advantage is my point. All right, let's continue.
There is a line of interference crossing the crown of the head. 43.2 questioner, is it this? A 2-inch fold.
Oh, yeah, yes, I did. Wow. How did you guys get talking about that, Cassie? She said Leo wrote a paper in college called Who Watches the Watchers. Yeah, I actually wrote that. Let's get into that, right? Thank you for bringing that up. I actually did. I wrote a paper. I wish I still had it because I could hold it up for you to see. It was on my yacht when I got here 7 years ago. And when I got my effects returned to me, I didn't get that back. I actually had my paper that I had a B plus on, which drove me crazy because the teacher graded on a bell curve. And so because of that, I didn't get an A because some of the kids who would have gotten an F needed to have a D. So they took some of my A away and had me as a B plus, which at that time when I was in college and in high school prior to that, I got A's on everything. So it drove me crazy that I got graded on a bell curve because I didn't think it was fair that the dumb kids had to graduate because that's the way that colleges were. No child will be left behind. So therefore, instead of teaching them, we'll just move their grade up. But that's going to be at the cost of other people because we have to have an average. So a bell curve is what caused that. But however, so I got a B plus on it and it drove me nuts that I had a B plus on it. It still bothers me. And here we are, and I'm 40 years since, right? Or 30 years later, I'm still mad about it. So I was in a government class and I wrote a paper for one of my, I think it was midterm or I think it was a term paper. And I don't remember if it was the beginning or middle, but it wasn't the final. It was in the beginning. And you could write about whatever you wanted to write about. At the time, I was very into politics. Think about that, right? I was working for the Irish government. So I was very into politics. So I wrote about politics and I wrote about the military industrial complex of the United States of America. And so I actually entitled it "Who Watches the Watchers?" And I wrote two, one prior to that, which was about. It was called the industrialization of civilization, and then my follow-up for the midterm was "Who Watches the Watchers?" And both of those were part one, part two. And because of that, I was my teacher's pet when it came to governmental systems, the CIA, all of these different agencies around the world and what they were up to around the world and the military-industrial complex. He knew that he told people, "You're my expert on that." So whenever he was talking about that, he would refer to me and ask me questions, and I would give him, and he knew that what I was talking about was accurate. I wasn't making it up. So he would refer to me a lot when it came to that. That's why I think he's the one who stole my paper. So I literally wrote Who Watches the Watchers? And it was about the military-industrial complex or the deep state of the United States of America, the CIA, the National Security Agency, the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the CIA being the Central Intelligence Agency, which in truth means counterintelligence agency. But they'll tell you it means Central Intelligence Agency, which is a lie. It was put together as a counterintelligence, which is now basically a terrorist group. So I wrote this paper, and it was literally called that. And then all of a sudden, about 4 or 5 years later, the History Channel comes out with a documentary. You can look it up. You can watch it. And it's actually entitled "Who Watches the Watchers?" I wrote that. I didn't get any credit for it. They didn't change anything that I said. They added visuals to it and had a narrative and didn't change anything that I wrote. Those are all my words that I wrote when I was in college. And I used to have the paper with the date on it of when I wrote it and when it was graded to actually show people. Turn on the television, find that documentary, start watching it, and I would hand you my book. And you could read it and look up when that documentary was created by the History Channel, when it was aired, and then you could read word for word through my paper. There's no way I could have written word for word and have it printed and signed by a teacher 5 years earlier and have the History Channel have it. I didn't get any credit for it. Don't care. I probably could have sued the History Channel over it because I had literally a piece of paper. Somebody got paid. Someone in my class got a hold of my paperwork. My teacher was the only one that had it that I was aware of, got a hold of it. And obviously it made its way. You can't be that accurate. It didn't change what I had said. So the only way that happens is that somebody in that classroom or a friend of mine, which the people that I knew at the time had to have Xeroxed it off, and none of them got rich. So if they did do it, they never got paid very much from the History Channel. But you can watch that documentary that they put out, and I can't prove it now because that paperwork disappeared. I never got it. It's gone off the face of the earth now. So you could say I'm lying, and that's okay. I know that I wrote it, and I'm okay with that. There's literally like Omar has a group called Watchers Talk, and he told me, which he hates now that he knows this, but he told me that it was the reason he called it his thing Watchers and Watchers Talk was because of Who Watches the Watchers on History Channel. I told him the same story. I wrote that. And he was like, no, you didn't. I'm like, I swear to God, I did. I'm not lying to you. I'm not just making that up. So that drives him crazy because he thinks I'm a moron. And the whole reason for his entire podcast that he's had in his shows that he's been doing for the last 10 years is because of something that I wrote when I was, I guess I was 20 at the time, 19 or 18 to 20 when I was in college. So literally it's about the military industrial complex. Literally it's about who watches the watchers, because the overseers are these governmental systems around the world and these secret organizations, Mossad, MI5, MI6, KGB, whatever you call them, the CIA, whatever you call them. Your country has a version of this spy network, and they're supposed to be the overseers and watchdogs of everyone who's supposed to be keeping you safe. Who watches them? That's what I was like. Who watches the watchers? Because they're up to no good and they're doing all kinds of stuff. Look at what they call the deep state in the military industrial complex worldwide. Currently, those people are not elected officials and they're in charge around the world. So it hasn't changed. It's been the same. But no one was paying attention to it until guys like Bob Woodward started pointing that out with Veal and the commanders back then, starting in the 70s, going into the 80s. I read those books and then went beyond that and started researching. I also read Michael Levin's book, and I forgot what it was called now, that he wrote where he was a DEA agent here in the United States, and his best friend was another DEA agent who got killed. His name was Kiki Caminera, and he got killed, and they were in Bolivia, and they were trying to go after all these guys down there in South America, Central America, and in Mexico, who were these cartel bosses, drug lords. And as it turned out, we find out now, but back in the late 70s, early 80s, no one knew about this. Turns out that they were being used by the CIA of the United States, who were actually behind the entire operation, still are. So the drug cartels sending all the people up here to the United States, the 12 million that have come in the last 4 years into the United States, they're making more than $1 billion a day. How much of that money is being funneled to the government here? A lot of it. All the drugs that they send up here. There's movies now made about the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and everything in between, or from then till now, that showed that the CIA has been behind all of these operations. They still are. Okay? They still are. They always have been. Okay, so the drug trade, they're saying it's all China's fault, that China is sending fentanyl and that the drug cartels are making the pills out of the fentanyl and sending that here. All of that's orchestrated by the same people with the same money behind the scenes. Otherwise, if it really was that bad, they would stop them from doing it. The fact that they're not, and the fact that it's been told over and over and over that they're using the deep state money to fly that shit up here. So you have stuff coming across the ground, which is there for people to chase after and catch. But the truth is that most of that stuff's being flown here. There's guys now that are talking about that are whistleblowers from the military that Dr. Stephen Greer has been showing for the last 10, 20 years. He goes all the way back to the 90s, where he was working for the government for a while, the United States government. And he's literally talking to all these military personnel who have witnessed all these UFOs, UAVs. And when they start talking, they're never saying these things are aliens. They're always saying these people are American Secret Service agents that are bringing drugs, people, sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking from all over the world into the United States. Okay. But they don't portray it that way specifically. When you listen to what they're saying, none of them are saying that person was from outer space flying a spaceship. It's always they had this spaceship, so it wasn't a normal aircraft that we know of now. But yet, they were humans in military garb without any insignias. And of course, they were speaking English. It sounded like Americans. And they were really scary. Okay? And seemed to have authority. That's the theme. So that plays into the breakaway society theory that they already have this technology that's far more advanced than anything that we have currently. And that they're now what you think is UFOs flying around. Our government says that is not a UFO or a UAP. Of course it's not. They know what it is. Do you see? They know what it is. So to them, it is not unidentified because they know what it is. They own it. Okay? So who watches the watchers? There's an entire societal structure that is going on right in front of your face, just out of your view, that these people are doing, that you're unaware of, because you think everything that you see is all we have. And then they have you believing that the earth is flat and that we're even more further back into the Stone Age because of this fake thing called the firmament. Okay? So you have to realize that. So yeah, I wrote that paper and you could look it up. You could watch the documentary. I wrote that. But I didn't get any credit for it. I still, and to this day, now I can't sue over it. I would have to go back to my teacher, find out if somewhere on microfilm is a copy of that to prove it. Why? It got information out there to the people of this earth who can watch that documentary worldwide and has changed the course of people's thinking and helped some of them to evolve spiritually and otherwise to start questioning. I've done my job, so it doesn't matter to me if everybody out in the world gives credit to me for writing it. Okay? That's why when people ask me as a minister, do you really think that Jesus was real? Although it seems now that they've possibly identified his actual tomb. I started watching that video that one of you guys linked. I don't remember who it was. It might have been you, Rick. Somebody linked it to me. It might have been Peter. Peter, I think you linked it. Let me know. One of you guys linked it to me, and I started watching it. And I haven't been able to finish it because I've been too busy. And I promise I'm going to watch it. But it looks like that they actually have now identified a tomb that was you. Thank you, Peter. I thought it was you. When I said Rick, I was like, wait, nope, I think that was Peter. So Peter Coyle has a copy of a video that has been put out where it shows, it's, I guess, a little documentary, a small one. I think it was like 30 minutes long or something, where they believe they actually found the real tomb of Jesus of Nazareth. I haven't watched the whole thing to find out if at the end, which is what most people do to get away from the censors from being killed, is then they go, well, we don't really have any actual proof. Wink, wink. You make the decision for yourself. That's what people are forced to do now to get themselves not canceled and not killed for giving you information. They have to give a disclaimer at the end. That's why the what's going on guy or whatever his name is, what the F is going on or WTF files. There's a guy on YouTube and all over that he does that. And it used to bother me because he would always give you this information. And then at the end he would go, but then again, we don't have any proof of that. So you make up your own mind. And I'm like, why do they do that? And then it was explained to me. They do that so they don't get canceled by telling you this knowledge definitively. And then at the end going, but there is no definitive proof. So you have to make up your own mind. They're not claiming that what they're saying is true. Therefore, because of the disclaimer, all of this information, you see that sometimes on videos, know that this entire video is completely for entertainment purposes. When someone says that, it keeps that video from being deleted. Because if somebody says you're giving disinformation or misinformation, they say, no, there's a disclaimer at the beginning or at the end of the video that says all of this is just for entertainment purposes. They have to do that so the video can stay on the air, because the secularists and those people that are in service to self that own this matrix and believe they own it all, they will censor you. And if you don't shut up, they ruin your life. and they make up charges against you or just say crap against you in public, and then people believe it because no one does any research for themselves. They have a short attention span of 15 seconds. So when somebody says something, oh, no way, hang that guy, and they didn't even look it up, and they're just immediately believing that someone says something. That's being tried in a court of public opinion. That's what they've reduced you all to. And that's why there was somebody that just said that, posted that the other day, yesterday or the day before on like Facebook or somewhere, that said, I was watching it, and since I'm all over the place, I don't know where I saw it, but they said, if you literally believe somebody's narrative about what you're saying, or you don't know, more specifically what the person said, if you can't argue both sides of every argument or accusation against someone, that means someone else is doing your thinking for you, which is absolutely true. So if you only watch one specific channel of news because you agree with their narrative that they teach you, and you don't know anything other than what that channel tells you, and you believe that, and you start regurgitating that when someone says something about Donald Trump or Joe Biden, and you start saying talking points from one perspective, and you don't see both sides of that, and you can't argue both sides of that. That's why in a debate class, they do that on purpose, to where they literally say, what is your viewpoint on this? Okay, we want you to argue the opposite viewpoint now. That teaches you that you have to learn both sides of every argument so that you can then make a decision about that subject by weighing out all of the facts, not one person's point of view. And what they count on when you're watching television and watching the news is the opposite, that you're only going to listen to them and their narrative. That's why you watch that channel, because you agree with them. That's why you listen to the channel on YouTube or on your radio or your podcast. Or most people only want to hear what they want to hear. And that's what they do. They don't listen to both sides. They don't look at both sides. Or they just go lies, 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 lies. Because they're not open-minded enough to weigh out both sides. That's 98%. Okay, they're telling me it's not. It's 95%. It's 95% of the population of this earth don't weigh out all of the facts. So those of us, that's why those of us like myself say, don't believe a word I've said to you about anything. Look it all up for yourself. Because I want you to start thinking for yourself. The only way you can do that is to start asking questions for yourself. And you start looking things up, and that means you have to start listening to both sides and hearing both sides so that you can make a balanced decision on weighing out both sides. To only listen to one narrative means that person is telling you what you are to believe. That's why on my Facebook page, in the background on the wall, I leave up almost exclusively, unless there's a holiday, the newscaster that says it's 6 p.m. Up next, what we want you to think. Because that is the narrative that you don't understand is being said to you everywhere you go. Perfect example, everyone's telling you about Instagram. Instagram, owned by Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, same people who own Facebook, they just changed their on Instagram, they just changed their algorithm to not give you specific political agenda. Why? We're going into an election cycle in the United States for president. So they're editing what content you can listen to without telling you about it. And the only way that you can fix that is you have to go into your settings, which I haven't looked into yet to find out exactly what, but you have to go into your settings and say, wait, no, I want to be able to have political content to look at. So you have to change the settings. So it wasn't like they gave you when you logged on, this is what we're going to do. If you want to opt out, press here to opt out. They didn't give you the choice. They just did it and didn't tell anyone. And then all of a sudden they posted it somewhere, but it wasn't in a thing you had to sign a new, I logged on and I had to sign a new agreement. And because you didn't read the agreement, you don't know that that's what we changed. That didn't happen because I didn't have that happen to me. But I was told. And so I looked into it and found out that it was true. So unless you actually follow someone that posts things about politics, you're not going to get the narrative in an inbox anywhere, or when you go on the what's supposed to be the open field of what's been posted in the last hour. It won't be there for you to even see. So they're censoring people that they don't agree with. And you can't see it or even know about it unless someone tells you about it. And then you have to figure out how to fix it. So there's going to be people out there that are going to start talking about that. I haven't seen one yet, but when I do, I'll post it, of how you go in to fix that. That's what they do. That's why I tell people don't look up something in a fact check until you fact check the fact checker. Whatever fact check site you go to, go in and find out who created that site, who owns that site, and find out who pays that site. Because what you'll find out is that it is slanted specifically for one political agenda. Okay? So if you go to a site, I'm going to fact check Donald Trump, and you go to a site that says Donald Trump's an idiot and doesn't know what he's talking about, look into that site and find out if it's a Republican site or if it's a Democratic site. You're going to find out it's a liberal Democrat site. Do you see? And they're going to always say he's a moron. And the other way around. If you go to a site that is always saying that Joe Biden is a moron, look at who created the site and who owns the site and the political background of the specific people who are in charge of that site. And you're going to find that they don't like him. So when people go, I fact checked him, I'm using a fact check site. Well, the fact check site, 90%, probably 95% again, of the fact check sites are either stumping for the Republicans or stumping for the Democrats. Okay, so it's not true. They're lying to you. So they're fact checking, telling you they're lying when they're lying to you about that they're lying, because they want you to believe that they're telling you the truth and that person is lying, because they hate that person and they don't want that person to be the president. These are the things that you have to become aware of. That's the modus operandi of people that are in service to self. They're doing it to you everywhere. The same thing with deep fakes now. I literally just saw one from Ted Nugent, or about that, where they deep faked him, where he said, we literally can't sell due to some technicality. We can't sell you this compound bow. But if you click on this here, we're giving away to the first 50,000 people, anybody who wants one of these compound bows. That's a deep fake. Ted Nugent never said that. None of that's real. It was created by AI, and it is in fact fake, and it is in fact a scam. And it's out there on the internet. First time I saw it, because I used to authenticate video and photos. And I still do it now for people. But I did it for governments, and I did it for the Ancient Aliens community forever. Still do it because I still own Ancient Aliens Worldwide. Literally, when I see videos, I look at them and go, that's not right. That's not real. Because AI hasn't gotten it down yet when they take your image and have it talk. Okay? A person's entire face changes. They haven't perfected that yet. Eventually, they're going to, so the deepfakes are going to be harder to figure out. Kelly Clarkson is schlepping for some vitamins, claiming that's how she lost weight. Not true if you know Kelly Clarkson. I don't know her personally, but I watch her show. And I follow her. She didn't lose weight because she took vitamins. But somebody created a commercial, supposedly by her, schlepping the vitamins. They did the same thing with Taylor Swift. Both of them had to sue. So there's legislation here in this country right now to stop that. I tell you that because they're doing that with your content, stealing your content and selling it to other people. Those laws have to be changed around the world to get that under control, so that corporations can no longer say, when you are on our site, you agree that we can take all of your information from you and watch you and your keystrokes and get all your information, and we can sell that to people for money and make money off you, because that's what they're doing when you hit yes to the agreement on all platforms, on every app that you own. You're giving them total permission to have the rights to you, all of your information, and also saying, we also give you the right to sell us to someone else who can bombard us with commercials now and emails. You're like, I don't even know how that guy, how I ended up with that in my inbox. Because you clicked on something that said on there, when you click on this, You're agreeing that all of these people that we own, that are our subsidiaries of our country, our company, or they're affiliated with us, can send you information by agreeing to the terms of their app or the terms of their platform. That's being done, and it has been since the internet, and those people figured out those algorithms for the last 25, 30 years now. All of that needs to change because you guys need to become aware of all of that. And you need to put legislation in your countries to stop these companies from doing it. They're fighting back against it, and they're spending hundreds of billions of dollars lining the pockets of those watchers who are supposed to be watching everyone and representing you, who watches the watchers, because they're all getting paid by corporations, paid off to not have legislation so that they can make trillions of dollars off of all of us humans on this planet and funneling that money and sharing it to everybody else so they're all getting rich. And you're unaware of why you say a word, your phone hears it, and you get a commercial. And you're like, I just talked about that and I got a commercial on my phone, because your phone's listening to you, because there's an algorithm and it's targeting you because it knows that you were interested in that. And there's a company that is associated with that, whatever your phone, Siri or whatever. And that they sold your information to, and it happens so quickly that you talk about something and 5 minutes later, a minute and a half later, you get a commercial about it. That's how quickly it happens. Okay. So I was aware of the beginning of that before the internet, when the internet was very young. I was very forward thinking. That's why I ended up working for the governments that I did, because I was forward thinking about the internet. I'm not going to go into all those details, but I've talked to people privately and told them about that. So literally, yeah, right. Cassie's like, yeah, true story. It is a true story. I was aware of that back in the early 90s when the internet first hit, that the internet was the way of the future. I didn't buy any stock, which I should have. But I was aware of that and utilized the internet in a way that no one was even aware that you could. And I went to work for more than one government doing that. They're catching up. And they're doing it. And these corporations realize that, and realize that was where the true money is. Create a platform. You want to get rich. I told people this when I was 18. If you want to get rich, come up with a get rich quick scheme. You don't have to do it yourself. Come up with a get rich quick scheme and sell that get rich quick scheme to everybody else. That is what's being done all over every platform today. They're saying you can make all kinds of money if you do this, 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 and this. They're not doing this, 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 and this. They've come up with a possible way of making money, and they're selling you that. Click on here and I'll show you how. And they're getting paid because there's algorithms from certain companies that they're going to tell you to use. And if you go and click on their thing and then from there go to those companies, make sure you tell them Joe sent you. Joe gets paid money when you have to go there and pay those algorithms to work for you. You're paying them company. The company's paying a portion of that money to the guy who you clicked on that got you to go there. That's how an affiliation works. Okay. You click on someone's website. If you go from their website and buy something on another website, the reason that that's on there is because they're affiliated with that other website. I can do that on Amazon. I can have a website and I can have links on my website that'll take you to Amazon. If you go from my website to Amazon, Amazon is aware of that. If you then purchase something, I get a portion of their profit for the finder's fee of you clicking from my website to them. That's how websites make money. Advertising and affiliation. So why do you think that people are out there and they have like porno pictures? Every time you click on that from Google, Google gets paid a certain amount of money and pays them a certain amount of money to have you search there and to click on that. So you look on the clickbait and you look at a picture, or you surf on something and it takes you to Amazon. You go to Amazon. Now it takes you to whatever website. Redirects you. When it redirects you, both those people now make money off of the advertisement for you. That's how money is made on the internet. Okay. You don't know that. You're like, well, the internet's free because I pay for my internet. The provider and the apps make money from you paying your phone, your smartphone, and the like. You pay for the internet. That internet has access, just like my phone has mostly Google products on it. So Google has a contract with with Cricket Wireless. And when I buy the phone, Google pays them a certain amount of money when I spend time on their products, searching on Google and all these other things because they're on my phone. So it's convenient. So they get kickbacks because they're affiliated and they have a contract that they put those apps on the phone. Okay. You're thinking it's free. Well, I'm paying money to my carrier to have total access. Part of that is going for the advertisement that I'm going to see. And when I click and I go to Google and search, Google pays them. So they make money off of Google for you going to Google by using the app. When you're on Google, they make their money off of what? Advertising and affiliation. So when you search for something on Google, people pay money to make their search higher on the search bracket. So a company will pay them, say, $100 million to make their search the first one when you search for something in that category. Then you click on that. Because of that, you now go to their site. That means that it was money well spent to Google. Google then gets paid for you going to their website. Do you understand? So Google sells slots. Will you pay me money? I'll put you up higher on the search list. And you do that, and it's just like paying for a commercial. You're paying to have the commercial up there. That means you're more likely to click on that commercial and go to that place as you are to look down the list to other things. No one wants to look until page 10 to find a place. They want the quickest ones, 1, 2, or 3. Those people paid to have that there to the app that you're on, who also paid your company to have that app on your phone, portion of that money. They're all affiliated. That's how it works. So you don't know how money is transferring. How do these people get rich? From advertising and affiliations. Okay? You need to realize that. There's an entire industry that is the internet. Every time you click on something and you get redirected to something else and you click there, everyone's in that circle gets paid. And then if you buy something, a portion of that goes back to all those people as well. They're all profit sharing off of you. And all of that is also taking all of your information, all of them are taking all of your information and targeting you so that you continue to buy their products. Do you understand that? All of that is what's happening in this reality. They're utilizing those tools to their advantage, and you don't even know, you're not even aware of it. Okay? So you're literally a product. You are a product that is working for them and making them rich. And the only way it works is that you don't know about it so they don't have to pay you, me, all of us, to keep themselves rich. And they count on that you didn't read that when you clicked on yes to be on their platform or on their app to their terms of agreement. Because nobody reads that. Click yes. My God, it's 20,000 pages long. I'm not going to sit there and read all that. That's what they count on. You're not going to do the research. You don't care. You just want the app because everybody likes it. You click on it, and now you're a product. They're making money off of your life and everything you do. And they're also redirecting you through the Jedi mind trick to buy their products, and you're not even aware that you're doing it to yourself, and you've given up the right to your own benefit, and they're controlling every aspect of your life, and you're unaware of it. And you're just becoming aware of it because you go, my God, I just talked about that and got a commercial on my phone. How in the hell did that happen? Because you agreed to allow them to do that to you on every platform you went on, but you're unaware of that. So it's taken 20 years of the internet doing this for people to start doing it. And then you have like search engines like DuckDuckGo who are telling you on commercials, we still make our money off advertising, but we're not allowing anyone to follow you around and selling that to other people. So you now have companies that are telling you, this is what's happening on these other platforms. They're not making it up. If they were, the other platforms would be suing them over it and making them cease and desist for lying and making shit up. The fact that nobody has done that and Google hasn't tried to kill DuckDuckGo and they're getting bigger is because what they're telling you is the truth. And Google knows about it. So does everyone else. Do you see? Okay. So you have to become aware of your surroundings, what's going on. Everything you think and suspect that makes you sound paranoid or think you're paranoid to yourself might not be, you may not be as paranoid as you think you are. You could be, if you're a paranoid person by nature, you could be paranoid about everything and then freak yourself out because your ego will run with it. Okay. All right, let's continue so we can finish the session today.
In the sheet is located 3 inches from the crown of the instrument's head and is laid flat on the bed. Is that it? Ra, I am Ra. This is correct. Please increase the distance from the crown of the head. 43.3 Questioner. Ruffles in the sheet are smoothed all along the length of the sheet next to the instrument's head. Is that satisfactory? Ra, I am Ra. Yes.
Hi, Joanne, by the way. I just looked down. I saw you talking, and I saw people saying, look, oh, hey, good, you're here. Welcome. So, hi. So, if you don't say hi in the chat, I don't know you're here. Okay, let's continue.
43.4 Questioner. I am sorry that we failed to notice that. Ra, we communicate now. 43.5 Questioner. I'll just try to pick up the last question left over from the last session. If you can answer it, I don't know if it is of any importance, but it just occurred to me that the parts removed in cattle mutilations are the same every time.
Oh, wait a minute. I think we started over, didn't we? Hold on. Let me see where we are. Yeah, we started over. I apologize. I thought we were finishing the session, and I clicked on it, and we started over. So we're done with this session. So I'll stop that. With the whole last 2 questions, I was like, wait, those questions sound familiar. The second he said, I'll just pick up by the cattle mutilation. I was like, hold on, that was the beginning of the session. So we finished. I'm not going to start the next session today because it's already getting late. So it'd be, well, if I do, well, you'll see. Next time I'll do that session and probably the beginning of the next one, because the first part of it is going to be all them talking about energy and Carla. And literally I listened to it was 10 minutes long. I listened to the first 5 minutes or so. And so they're not even talking about spirituality, but we'll get into that next week. So I'm not going to start it now because otherwise I could and just sit here for 5 or 10 minutes, just let it play up to that point. I'll do that next week. So if you guys have any questions, please throw them out now, right? This would be a good time to ask me questions. Doesn't have to be about, well, it could be about anything. If you guys if you want to ask questions and you have some question that you've been wanting to ask, whether it pertains to the law of one or any spirituality, does not matter to me. At this point, now's a good time to ask me questions, okay? And I'll try to answer them. Otherwise, if there are no questions and you guys don't have any questions, then I'll just sit here and maybe fill in for a few minutes and then I'll get off of here, okay? Because it looks like my mom's trying to fall asleep over there. She's probably bored with what's going on right now on there. So, right, yeah, DuckDuckGo. Rick said my mate's trying to tell me about DuckDuckGo currently. Yeah, so literally DuckDuckGo is first time you've heard of it. It's actually a search engine. I think it's an American company. That's probably why you haven't heard of it. But it's an app, and it's another search engine. There used to be many here in the United States, and Google pretty much bought most of them up. There was Ask Jeeves. There was one that was a dog. I forgot what it was called, and it was a black lab. There was many, and then most of them disappeared. But DuckDuckGo is around the world. I know because Peter, who is in Ireland, uses DuckDuckGo, so I know that it's worldwide. It's an app that you can get wherever you are worldwide, and they will literally tell you while you're on there. It'll tell you how many people you can. At least it used to. I don't know if it still does. I have it on my phone. I don't have it on my computer, but I have it on my phone. It tells you the companies that are following you and that they stopped them. We just stopped four algorithms who were stealing your information, who were following you around. That's why it shows you in the commercial that shows you a Google search, and there's a guy searching, and there's all these drones with a big eyeball looking at him, flying around him. And then there's a split screen, and over here's this woman who's on DuckDuckGo, and there's none of that going on. And he gets up and steps through the partition, steps through, and all of the drones get stuck and can't follow him. And he says, the narrative says, we make our money off of advertisements as well, but we don't allow all these algorithms to follow you like Google does. That's the commercial that's really big over here in the United States, advertising that. Okay, so Denise has a question, right? I don't think anybody else did. Denise says, Leo, how can I quiet my mind so I can meditate? That's the hardest part. That is what meditation is designed to do. Okay. So you have to turn off anything in the background. You can't have your phone on. You can't have a television on. Music is even, unless it's soothing to you, anything that your brain is going to lock onto to keep your concentration away from what you're doing is what your ego is going to concentrate on. So if there's any noise going on in the background, your mind is going to try and focus on that, because the ego doesn't want you, and neither does the mind itself when it's thinking, doesn't want you to move into that place, because it's designed not to let you move into that place where you realize I'm not the thinking mind and I'm not the ego. So it takes practice. You have to learn that and have diligence, right? Your focus creates your reality. Your diligence creates your reality. And your mind is going to constantly try to wander. That's why meditation takes practice, and it's not an easy thing. The hardest thing for everyone to learn is to quiet the mind. So what you're asking is not an easy question. So don't feel bad that you're having issue with it. We all do. I do. Even now, even though I'm aware of it, I do. Especially right after I've been asleep. Because when you're asleep, the thinking mind, the only way it can reach you is in dreams, which is in a superconscious state or a subconscious state. When you first wake up, your thinking mind and your ego start screaming everything it can to get your attention. Most of the time, it's fearful things. Oh my God, I have all this to do. I'm so late. I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do this. And oh my God, what about that? And what about this? And what about that? The world's coming to an end. And oh my God, I'm scared. I have to do this. And then there's that. And then I got to make breakfast. And then I got to do lunch. And all of that stuff just comes at you at 100 miles an hour when you're first waking up. That's because they haven't been able to reach you. The thinking mind and the ego, which is desperate for your attention, is trying to reach. So you have to first realize, okay, that you're not the ego and you're not the thinking mind. The first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. So you have to become aware of that. Then, to quiet those things, you have to shush them, okay, because they're designed to be a vox. They're designed to constantly try to get your attention. The ego is trying to keep you from the realization of ascension. This entire reality illusion is created to keep you here. It's a test that you're supposed to pass. The first step in that test is becoming aware that it is a test. The first step in avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. And what is the existence? That all of this is designed so that it tries to trap you here. It's all an ego, external and internal. It's all the same. The news, the internet, your cell phone are no different than this reality itself. None of that is any different than the ego in your mind. The ego utilizes the thinking mind to get your attention. Okay? They're not separate entities, and that's where people have a psychotic split, because they think their ego is, they give it a name and a personality, and the ego will take that on and split you into thinking it's a different personality. And multiple personalities if it can, anything to keep your attention. So your mind is constantly going to race if you listen to it. You have to realize that you're in charge. Okay? I am. I think, therefore I am. I am. And you have to go, no, and think that to yourself. Take control of the thought process. No. Shush. I am not thinking about that right now. I am thinking about nothing right now. I am focusing on these. That's why we give techniques where we teach people to imagine something as your quiet space and go to that place. Some people use in the movie of Fight Club, he used a cave, and a cold cave, where he would put himself into, and they show you that visual where Edward Norton did that in there, and then the ego took control of it, and he saw something weird and was like, "What was that just a bird that swooped by or whatever?" So you have to. That's why people say find yourself in a field of green grass. I say that because I just saw that on television. Find yourself in a field or under a tree or by a river or whatever it is that you find as comfort and tranquil as a specific place to go where there's no sounds other than the ones you want to be there. Now you're setting yourself in an environment that you are controlling, and then the ego will, and the thinking mind will grab on that and want to do work for you because you're in charge. So you will create the scenario that you want. When you find that serenity place for yourself, that's the place that you focus when you want to go to a place to quiet your mind. Make your mind create what you want it to create. Your focus determines your reality and creates your reality. So you have to stay focused. And when you start wandering, because that's what's going to happen, always, I find myself doing that at night when I'm trying to meditate before I go to sleep, that you'll start to go into the dream state and you'll wander off. And then you got to go, no, and pull yourself back. Monks traditionally would drink tea with caffeine, not at night, but to meditate. Why? First of all, it's going to speed you up, but it keeps you awake. So you don't wander off and get comfortable and go into a dream state. You can stay focused. But because you have tea or caffeine in your body, your mind is going to try and race. So you have to continue to focus your mind onto what you're trying to do. That's the beginning of that. Once you start becoming aware, again, the first step of avoiding a trap is knowing of its existence. Once you become aware that, oh, there I go, I'm wandering off, focus, stay focused, and you keep pushing yourself on point to focus and stay in that place. The more you do that, the more you focus on whatever place that is that's comfortable for you. It could be a memory of a childhood. It could be, I remember when I was a kid and I was really comfortable in mom and dad, and I had no cares in the world. It could be a place that you used to go to, or a dream house, or whatever it is. You're going to find that there's something that you enjoy and that you want to put yourself into that comfortable place. Focus on that and continue doing that. And you have to become aware the second your mind starts wandering off and you didn't realize it, you shush it in your mind, pull yourself back. That's the beginning. That's the hardest part. Constantly putting yourself back on track. And over time, that becomes easier to do. Okay. And then as you start doing that over time, more and more often, it becomes easier. And then you have to look at your chakras. And you have to start working with them. You have to eat the right foods as well. You have to look at everything to put yourself into that place. But you have to do the repetitiveness of doing it over and over and meditating over and over and learning that. And eventually, and this is why I do that 30-second meditation, eventually we do that to show you that you can achieve that, because you do it all the time in nature, that place where the thinking mind and the ego can't reach you, but you're still there as the witnesser, as the experiencer. So we do that to show you that, so that you know what it is you're trying to do when you meditate. Okay. So if you see a sunrise, anything you see that you have that awe moment or that aha moment when you're looking at, let's say you go to the Grand Canyon and you just stop and go, wow. You're not thinking, nothing. You're just observing and experiencing that moment. That's what you're trying to achieve in meditation. When you see the sun setting or the sun rising, and you just stop and you just look at it and go, wow. Or you see a painting, wow. That moment that you are currently in, when you do that, you're not thinking, and there's no ego talking to you in your mind by utilizing the thinking mind. That is what you're trying to achieve when you're meditating, that focus. You're above in vibration the reach of the ego, the thinking mind. You're above the reach of the ego that is this illusion. Clarity happens at that moment. You don't cease. Once you realize it and you observe that, then you know, I am not the body, the pain body. I am not the thinking mind. I am not the ego. I still exist when those things stop. That makes it easier for you to then stop them. But it takes practice. Once you are capable of doing that and realizing that, it extends how long you can stay in that place. And we teach to everyone in the world that what you're trying to attain is beingness, being in that place all the time in your entire day. it becomes to the point, this is where I am currently. There is nothing going on in my head. There is no external thought. There is no ego. And then we call that channeling. For those of you who give that a name. That is the place that I put myself into and I try to achieve at all times. Because the longer that you're in that place, the more you expand your consciousness, because the more you realize and perceive your true higher self. Do you see? So the beginning is quieting the mind by shushing it, being aware that you are not that, and shushing it, and constantly working that fight in the beginning. And then knowing that you can achieve it because you do it all the time and don't realize you're doing it until someone shows you. And that's why I do that 30-second meditation, to show you that. Okay? So it is hard work, and it's hard work for all of us, right? Right? Denny said, thank you. I'm going to work on that, on this. I love you so much. I love you too. Thank you. It is hard. It's hard because we're in the physical plane, in the place of doing, with an ego and a thinking mind, and this ego that is this illusion, and then the ego that is a television, the ego that is an internet, the ego that is every app on our smartphone, the ego of all the other egos, all the other people, and then people who are in service to self, they are, without them knowing it, an ego. And they'll even most of the time admit, I have a really big ego. They're okay with that. They don't realize that that is what they're supposed to be trying to overcome, because they've chosen to be about money, fame, power, control. That is all ego. So the fact that they want to be successful in this place means they're choosing ego. So you have to be egoic and play that game to make money here, to get rich and powerful and fame. So those people are huge egos because they don't know that they're not the ego. Do you see? They don't. They don't think to themselves, I am the ego. They don't think that at all. They're like, I have a really big ego. I have a really big ego. They don't realize what they're saying is, I think I am this ego. They're very competitive, hate to lose. That's all ego. All ego. Can't stand not winning. That's why they're successful in the place of doing. That's why they have a lot of money and they're successful, because they're living in the matrix. They believe the matrix is real, and I want to be successful in the matrix, and that means that I have to act this way and think this way, to be this way. It is not until they have the realization of their ascension that they change that. And a lot of them do. They get rich and then they go, fuck that, I don't care about any of that stuff anymore. And people go, they just gave up their entire life. No, they just started their entire life. But if your ego, you're like, I'm done with them, useless, they're useless, they just gave up everything. How could they just walk away from all that? Right? It's easy to walk away with when you have $1 billion in the bank. It's easy to not worry about making any more money and walking away. Most people who have money can't, and they're addicted to it. It's a drug. They have to have more and more and more and more because I want to own it all. And then they hit a certain level and realize they can't, because there's these people that are the 1%ers that won't let you, and that they think they own you even. Do you see? And they'll abuse you. And then you go, okay, and you just, this is my place because I'm not evil enough to take it from them. But I still want to be at food at the big table, as long as it's bigger than that table that those dumbasses don't get any of. So then you'll accept the little baby table that you have, that it's not the big table, that it's somewhere in, but it's above someone else's station, so that you can then look down on someone and say, I'm better than that one, even though there's more people above you than there are below you. Unless you move up in that, like you do in Dianetics, to where you move up, the more money that you pay and bring in for the church, then you get more and more power and control. And eventually, like when Mankiewicz dies or quits, it'll probably be, what's his name, the actor? Can't think of his name right now. Guy who played Maverick. He'll probably be the next guy in charge. Unless Mankiewicz lives to be really old, and then what's his name doesn't do that, right? But right now he's like second in charge there because he's paid $1 billion or so into the religion. So literally, that's the hardest part. Just keep working at it. You'll get there eventually. Just don't give up. Every time you realize your mind wanders, shush it, put it back on point. That becomes easier over time. But it is the hardest thing to begin. It is the hardest thing. It never ends because the ego doesn't die in this dimension. You can just keep it in its place, right? So when I first wake up from a nap, that's the hardest time. And you'll find you are the way same. First, when you first wake up, it's going to be the hardest time. Or when you doubt because you're not realizing that the ego is bombarding you. And that's when you have fear. Or you think you're the greatest in the world at something and your ego's telling you that you're the greatest, that I own everything, I know everything, I'm the one if it wasn't for me, I'm the gatekeeper, I am the knowledge bringer, you start thinking like that, you're the ego again, right? The realization of, I don't know everything. That's why Socrates said, the more you know, the more you realize that you know nothing, right? The more I know that I know nothing. That's not ego. That's somebody who doesn't matter how much you know, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't really know anything, right? So somewhere in your life, there's a point when you were younger, as a teenager, moving into your 20s, that you believed you knew everything in the universe. And then if you look back on your life, you're going to realize there was a day I woke up and thought, yesterday I knew everything, and today I don't know a goddamn thing. I know nothing. That was a transition in your reality of the realization that you really don't know everything. And that is the same thing that hits you when you wake up. That's what, the I will return as a thief in the night. It's not God coming back in a bus to pick up a bunch of people. It's your awakeness, you becoming awake. Your awakening moment is that realization. So the first one is, I think I know everything. I'm confident. I know how the world works, man. And then somewhere in your 20s, most people, it usually hits them in their 20s, they wake up and go, fuck, I'm scared. I don't know a goddamn thing about how the world works. Because then you start to perceive the world for the way it is. And then you go, wow, I really don't know a damn thing about the entire world and how it works. Then you're scared again. And then you have to start all over. The same thing happens when you wake up, is there's that fearful moment of, wait a minute, I don't know anything again. And so that graduation, but then there's levels of awakeness that as you ascend, and I've talked about them many times. So everything on every level is the same way. And the beginning one is the realization, first of all, that I am not the ego. I am not the thinking mind. This is an illusion. This is a dream. And I remember thinking back to, if I'm not those things, then what the hell is going to happen when I don't think? Am I just going to disappear? No, because you're not that. You're still there. Do you see? And so that's what we teach you. All right. So if there's any other questions, you guys, please, I know you probably have questions. You've probably been throwing them at me and I haven't been asking or reading them. So I'm going to go back and look and see if there's something that I missed, right? So if you guys do have questions now, bombard me with them, please. Yeah, anything that Rick said, because a thought enters your head, you don't have to entertain it. It's like quality control. Absolutely, Rick. Yeah, just because some thought enters your head doesn't mean you have to pay attention to it. That's the ego trying to get your attention at all costs to keep you from whatever it is that you're doing. Yeah. Yeah, right. You have to stay. And Cassie was, just observe, like Leo said, and then focus. With practice, it gets easier. Yeah, you just have to work at it. It's not an easy thing to do. It's the hardest stuff you have to do. Right? Cody said between 23 and 25. Yeah, right. That's about the same age as myself. Somewhere between 23 and 25 years of age. I woke up one morning and went, oh wow, I didn't know as much as I thought, and then I had to refocus. Even though I'm unveiled, you think you have this place figured out, and then you go, that's not it. And there's more to figure out about it. When you're here, you're still subject to this place, right? So even Jesus, and this is why I talked about in Angel Studios, The Chosen, the first 3 seasons, which is now picked up by Fox, by the way, which I'm like, okay, so what are they going to do? Are they going to continue with putting it out in the air for season 4, whatever? I liked that they showed in the beginning Jesus by himself before he started, and as he was picking up the 12 disciples, they would show him at night being afraid, where he would be praying. So Jesus, if you believe that that happened, the chosen Son of God in human form, being down here alone at night in the dark and being tempted eventually in the garden by the devil, is subject to this place and still had to find strength within himself to quiet his mind and ego that were making him fearful. Do you see? So they showed you that without telling you that. They showed you that in the Bible, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, without telling you what was happening. If you're unaware of it, that's why people like myself or ministers are here to give you that knowledge. Even the Son of God, the creator of the universe, in human form, is going through the same thing that you're going through. Because this place, no matter how big or small, how great or how infinitesimal that you are, you're subject to the same rules and the same things happen. So even the Son of the Creator in human form was subject to the ego, creating fear in his mind that he had to overcome in this place, not just once, over and over and over in his 33 years of life, even up to the day before he died. And moreover, some suggest while he was on the cross. So you never win, because this place isn't designed to have a victor or have someone defeated. This place is designed to be an ecosystem that is the yin and the yang forever. So no matter how good you get, you still are subject to it because you're here. So no matter how unveiled you are, no matter how awake you are, you're always going to still have that. The ego doesn't completely die when you leave this place and go to the fourth. The ego doesn't die until halfway through the sixth density. That is when there is no more choice, there is no more evil. Halfway through the sixth density. So your ego, in some ways, is going to be with you all the way until halfway through the sixth. That's 3 more levels above where you are currently. Okay? Right, so I hope that helps. Denny said I understood so much better now. Understand so much better now. Thank you so much. No, well, I'm still going on now. I'm speaking in parables to explain. You probably got it the first portion of what I said, but now I'm just hitting other people that might be listening around the world with different ways to explain the same thing over and over. Right. Right. Yeah, I know. Thank you for everybody for tuning in. It is Good Friday. So those of you, unless you're already on the other side of the Prime Meridian, then it's now Saturday. So it's almost Easter Sunday if you're Christian, which you should look up that Easter and find out what a rabbit and fertility has to do with Jesus. You should look into that. It's a different religion entirely. But it has to do with the cycle of life and ascension. So that message is the same. That's why those of us who know about that will joke with it and say, what does a bunny rabbit laying eggs or pooping out jelly beans have to do with Jesus' death and resurrection? And what does that have to do with the god Pan or any of the other gods from the Celtic religions and the Greek religions of the cycle of life? Right. Well, those are all based on the cyclical nature of this planet, and that springtime is happening now, and that's supposedly when God is renewing the earth, because that's the time that it's happening if you're in the northern hemisphere. If you're in the southern hemisphere, God is about to die, and you're going into that cold darkness of God being dead and the goddess being impregnated with the God that'll be born again in your spring. So, but that's the yin and the yang again. So you have the planet itself. The northern hemisphere is renewal right now in the beginning stages of the year, whereas the southern hemisphere of the earth is now going into the death and the resurrection won't be for another 6 months. And so there's the yin and the yang. The planet itself is split into two spheres that make up the one toroidal field. That is the nature of us. Okay, the center of the earth is the heart chakra, right? Or that toroidal field. But on the surface of the earth, there is a heart chakra, right? Just like I'm next to Shasta, which is the red ray #1 base root chakra, which is only about 150 miles north from where I'm sitting right now of the planet. And if you're in Uluru over in Australia or near that, those of you who are in Australia, that's the navel, that's the yellow or the orange ray, not the yellow, the orange ray chakra. And the heart chakra is currently over there in England, along with the third eye, as a matter of fact, because that's where it's moved to. It's going to move in the next 50 years. By 2032, it's going to shift. So we'll see if the people are aware of that as we go. The third eye chakra is going to move from where it is. I'm not sure where it's going to go. I'm looking now, and I believe it's going to go further north in Europe, possibly a little bit more east. I don't think it's going to go to the south, although it might. It just depends on where we are as well. It could. Right now I'm seeing that it could go to Africa, or it could go to the Russia area, or somewhere between India, Russia, China, but also possibly the South Pacific towards India and South Africa or Africa area. So it could move there. But that see, again, the future is a little weird. I normally don't look at that, but it is going to move from England. The third eye is going to move. But there is another possibility that it could move out to the Pacific over here up by Alaska as well. So that's going to be determined in the next, this is 2024. So that's going to be in the next 8 years. That's going to move. And where we're going to be as a species is completely different. And because some of us are aligning the grid lines again of the planet and pushing it back to where it should have been and will be, that's changing where all of the chakras, some of them are not moving, but the third eye chakra moves. That one is going to be focused in a different place, but that will be determined by how much work we put in and change as a species, and how much those of us who are aware, like when I go to sleep, and there's a lot of you that know this, some of you don't. Some of you, when you go to sleep, your body, physical body sleeps, you leave and you go do other things. Some of us spend most of our time helping the planet realign all of the grid lines, all of the ley lines, all of the energy lines, and we're moving and healing the planet and moving all the lines back to where they were 10,000 years ago, and 100,000 years ago, 78,000 years ago, and putting in things, writing things, and putting it back to fix, because we're off kilter. The planet's crooked by certain degrees currently, and we're filtering that and fixing that. That's going to change the position of the third eye. And that's why I see the possibilities of where it's going to go, because the third eye, being in Europe currently, is tucked in by the heart chakra currently as a defensive mechanism. But it's also helping to heal itself. So the planet has gone into a protective mode of understanding, and we're fixing that from that protective place and moving things back, and that's going to allow the planet to relax and move to a place where it thinks and should have itself. So as tension rises in Europe and the Middle East, going forward in the next 8 years, the third eye will focus somewhere that is a central location for all of the strife that's going to be happening throughout the Americas and the whole world as things get crazy, right? I can't give you any more of those details about that. They're stopping me now because I'm trying to get into too much detail about the workings. Some of what, because I'm not, they don't want me to tell people that could be listening to this that would have an advantage that shouldn't by knowing this information, but moreover because most of this is unsettled because it is still to be determined by the collective consciousness of what's going on, and has to happen organically. It's as close as I can get to explain what just went on in the higher plane right now. Okay. Yes, I know. Joanne says it's 12:42 a.m. here in the UK. I know. I see that. I'm aware of that. That's why I try to do my show at 3, so that it's not real late for you. But if I go on too long, it's real late for you guys. It's really early for the Australians when I start. And I try to do that at a central time so that the whole globe can tune in. All of you in Northern Europe and Europe right now, it's really late. I love you guys. I'm going to end the show. It's 5:30. You guys have a great night. 5:30 my time in the West Coast of America. Have a great Easter if you're Christian. If you're pagan, you know the holiday that you have going on. Whatever you have going on in your life, please work on yourself physically, food-wise, energy-wise, spiritual-wise. Constantly be aware that all of this is a test. This is just a test. It's not really happening to you. It's happening for you, and it's not really happening. It just thinks it is. I love you guys. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. I'll see you guys next week. This has been Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show.